You know, they say a family is like a tree. The roots are the ancestors, the trunk is the present generation, and the branches are the children, reaching for the sky. For 69 years, I believed my family tree was an oak, mighty, deep-rooted, unshakable. I was Agatha, the trunk, or so I thought. I've since learned that some branches aren't reaching for the sun, they're just waiting for the trunk to rot so they can sell the timber. It all started on a Sunday. Sundays were sacred in our house. The smell of roasting chicken, the sound of laughter echoing through the high ceilings of the old Victorian, the clatter of cutlery on my grandmother's china. It was a tradition I'd maintained since my Harold passed a decade ago. It was the glue, I told myself. The thing that held us all together. But this Sunday was different. The air felt thin, charged. The laughter was too loud, the conversation too careful. My son, Thomas, had arrived with his wife, but his usual impatience was sharper, his eyes scanning the familiar rooms not with nostalgia, but with a calculator's cold gaze. My daughter, Olivia, fluttered around me, fussing about a loose floorboard on the landing I'd told her about weeks ago. "It's just not safe, Mom," she kept saying, her voice a nervous bird. And Liam, my grandson, Thomas's boy, 23, with the slick charm of a young man who thinks he's already won the game of life. He was quiet, watching everything with a smug little smile that should have set off every alarm bell I possessed. The meal was a tense affair. The chicken tasted like ash. Finally, Thomas pushed his plate away. "Mom, we need to have a family meeting." My heart, my foolish old heart, gave a little leap. A family meeting. Perhaps they were planning a surprise trip for my 70th. Maybe they wanted to discuss renovating the West Wing for one of the great-grandchildren. "Of course, dear," I said, smiling. "What's on your mind?" They led me from the dining room into the grander living room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the 3 acres of land that had been in my family for 4 generations. They didn't sit around me. They sat opposite me, on the large sofa, a united front. I was alone in my favorite armchair, Harold's old chair. I felt like a defendant. Thomas cleared his throat. "Mom, we're worried. This house, it's too much for you." Olivia chimed in, her voice trembling with manufactured concern. "The stairs, the garden, the upkeep. We lie awake at night thinking about you taking a fall." I waved a hand. "Oh, for heaven's sake. I'm as spry as I was at 60. Dr. Evans says I have the bones of a 40-year-old. That's when Liam leaned forward. The family meeting wasn't a discussion. It was an intervention. My grandson Liam slid the glossy brochure for Sunset Meadows Senior Living across the coffee table, the polished wood scarred by the cheap, shiny paper. The photograph on the front showed unnaturally happy, silver-haired people playing shuffleboard in a sterile courtyard. "Grandma," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "We've decided it's time. This isn't a home. It's a liability." The word hit me like a physical blow. Liability. This house, where I was born, where I raised my children, where I held my husband as he took his last breath. This repository of a million memories was a liability. Decided? I managed to whisper, my throat tight. "You've decided?" Thomas took over, his businessman's persona taking center stage. "We've had an offer, Mom. A very generous one. From a developer. They want to build a cluster of high-end condos. It's a life-changing amount of money. For all of us." "The house," I stammered, looking around at the walls that held our history. "They'd tear it down?" "It's not practical for the modern world, Agatha," Thomas said, using my name like I was a difficult client. "The plumbing, the wiring, it's a money pit. Sunset Meadows is a state-of-the-art facility. You'll have your own apartment, no maintenance, people your own age." People my own age? I felt a hot anger begin to cut through the shock. I have a life here. My friends, my garden, my things. "We'll handle all of that," Olivia said quickly. Reaching out a hand, she then pulled back. "We'll have a lovely estate sale. It'll be so much less for you to worry about." I looked from one face to another. My son, my daughter, my grandson. Their expressions were a mixture of impatience, pity, and in Liam's case, naked greed. They had it all figured out. My future, my past, my home. All neatly packaged and ready for disposal. "The offer is time-sensitive," Liam added, tapping the brochure. We've already signed the letter of intent. The room swam. You signed something? About my house. Our inheritance, Grandma, Liam corrected, his smile never slipping. We're just expediting the process. For your own good. For my own good. The three most patronizing words in the English language. I stood up, my legs shaking. Get out. Mom, please, be reasonable, Thomas started. I said, get out. My voice, usually so soft, cracked through the room like a whip. All of you. Get out of my house. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then, with sighs of exasperation, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum, they gathered their things and left. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that descended was the most profound and terrifying I had ever heard. The great house, usually so full of warmth, felt like a tomb. My own children had just tried to bury me alive in it. For 2 days, I moved through the rooms like a ghost. I didn't eat. I barely slept. Their words played on a loop in my mind. Liability. Decided. For your own good. The betrayal was so complete, so coldly calculated, that it felt like a physical illness. I was drowning in it. On the 3rd day, as I sat at the kitchen table staring at a cold cup of tea, my eyes fell on an old, framed photograph on the wall. It was of my father, Samuel, standing on the porch next to his own father. Both men had a fierce, protective light in their eyes. They loved this land. My father, especially. He was a quiet man, a man of deep thought and principle. A memory, faint as a whisper, surfaced. I was a young woman, maybe 20. Harold and I were getting serious, and Dad had sat me down for a talk. Not about boys, but about the house. This place isn't just bricks and mortar, Aggie, he'd said, his hand warm on mine. It's a trust. It's for the future. I've made sure of that. What had he meant? At the time, I'd thought it was just sentimental talk. But now a tiny, desperate spark of hope ignited in the crushing darkness. I've made sure of that. I went to the old roll-top desk in the study, a piece of furniture that hadn't changed in 100 years. I pulled out the important documents box. There was my will, drawn up after Harold died. There were the property tax statements. And there, beneath them, was a faded, blue-backed document. My father's last will and testament. I skimmed it, my heart pounding. It seemed straightforward. It left everything to me, his only child. But then I remembered the lawyer. Oliver Pembroke. He'd been ancient even when I was a girl, my father's dearest friend and legal counsel. He'd handled my parents' affairs, and mine and Harold's too, until he'd semi-retired decades ago. I wasn't even sure if he was still alive. It took some searching, but I found a number for Pembroke and Sons. A young voice answered. Pembroke Law. I'd like to speak to Oliver Pembroke, please, I said, my voice trembling. I'm sorry, Mr. Pembroke Sr. is retired. Can my father, Charles, help you? It's about the trust, I blurted out, the word feeling strange on my tongue. The family trust. For the property on Maple Drive. It's Agatha Greenwood. There was a pause, then the young voice returned, noticeably more respectful. One moment, Mrs. Greenwood. A minute later, a frail but firm voice came on the line. Agatha? Little Agatha Greenwood? Is that really you? Tears welled in my eyes at the sound of his voice. Hello, Oliver. My dear child, what's the matter? You sound distressed. I told him everything. The family meeting, the brochure for Sunset Meadows, the developer's offer, the signed letter of intent. I poured out my heartache and my fury. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Oliver spoke, and his voice was cold with an anger I'd never heard from the gentle old man. The utter, unmitigated gall. Agatha, listen to me very carefully. Do not sign a single thing. Do not agree to anything. I am coming to see you tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. This is a fight, my dear, and you are about to learn that you hold all the weapons. Oliver arrived precisely at 10, leaning heavily on a cane, but with eyes that sparkled with fierce intelligence. He carried a worn leather briefcase. We sat in the living room, the scene of the crime, and he laid out the truth. Your father, Oliver began, was a brilliant man. He saw how families could tear themselves apart over property after a death. He didn't want that for you, or for the generations to come. So, he didn't just leave you the house. He placed the entire property, the house and the land, into a family trust. He opened his briefcase and produced a document, much thicker than the one I had. This is the true and operative trust document. The one you have is an early draft, voided the day this was signed. Your father named you the sole, lifelong trustee and beneficiary. You have the absolute right to live here, to manage the property, to do with it as you see fit until your dying day. I listened, my hand over my mouth. Upon your passing, Oliver continued, the property does not get sold and the proceeds divided. No. The trust stipulates that your descendants inherit a right of use. They can live here, they can enjoy it, but they cannot sell it. It must be passed down, preserved. Thomas and Liam must have found the old, void copy and assumed that was the final word. This, he tapped the real document, is the final word. And it is unassailable. The relief that washed over me was so powerful it left me weak. They couldn't do it. They had no right. The oak tree was not rotten. Its roots were protected by law and by love. What about the letter of intent they signed? I asked. Oliver's smile was thin and sharp. It's worthless. They have no legal standing to sell so much as a blade of grass. But their attempt is actionable. We will have to move quickly. And so we did. With Oliver's steady hand guiding me, I became not just Agatha, the grieving matriarch, but Agatha, the trustee. It was a role that fit me like a well-worn glove. We drafted a cease and desist letter, sent by a process server to Thomas's office and to Liam's sleek downtown apartment. It stated in clear, legal terms that any attempt to sell the property was fraudulent and would be met with immediate litigation. I called the bank and, exercising my authority as trustee, froze the small joint account we used for property taxes, an account Thomas had access to. It was a symbolic cut, but a deep one. Then I sat down at my computer. I wrote an email to my entire extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole sprawling network. I didn't scream or rant. I was calm, measured, and devastatingly clear. I explained what had happened, how my own children and grandson had tried to pressure me out of my home using a void document, how they had callously arranged to sell our heritage for condos. I framed it not as a personal attack on me, but as a betrayal of my father's legacy and the entire family's history. I shamed them publicly and perfectly. The fallout was immediate. My phone rang off the hook, but not with calls from Thomas or Olivia. It was from family members I hadn't heard from in years, offering support, expressing their outrage. The court of family opinion had convened, and the verdict was unanimous. Thomas, Olivia, and Liam were pariahs. For a few weeks, there was silence from them. I began to breathe again. I started working in my garden, the rich soil a healing balm. I had my friends over for tea, and the house began to fill with genuine laughter again. I had one. I should have known the battle wasn't over. Liam was too much like his father, but with the added venom of a digital-age snake. He didn't fight with lawyers, he fought with dirt. He showed up unannounced one afternoon, letting himself in with a key he should have returned. He didn't look smug anymore. He looked furious. Cornered. You've ruined my reputation, he spat, waving his phone at me. That email? My clients are asking questions. Then you should have thought of that before you tried to evict your grandmother, I said, standing my ground. This isn't over, he sneered. He pulled a sheaf of photocopied papers from his bag. I've been doing some research. Did you know your saintly great-grandfather, the original owner of all this, he gestured wildly at the house, was a thief? My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? The land, Grandma. 1923, he bought it from a family named Flores for a pittance. A Mexican family who'd worked it for years. The records are messy, but it's clear old great-grandpa Samuel strong-armed them out. Used some shady debt scheme. This legacy you're so proud of? It's built on theft. He leaned in close, his eyes gleaming with malice. So here's the new deal. You sign the property over to me, quietly, and I bury this. Or I go to the local news. I'll tell them how the beloved Greenwood family legacy is actually a monument to racism and exploitation. Do you want your great-grandchildren to know their legacy is built on theft? How will that look on the historical plaque? He left the copies on the table. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. This was worse than the first betrayal. This struck at the very soul of the place I loved. Was it true? Was my sanctuary, my fortress, founded on a sin? I gathered the papers Liam had left. They were fragments, old land registry entries, snippets of court documents, carefully edited to imply a terrible truth. But Oliver had taught me to look for the whole story. I went to the Town Historical Society, a place I'd always meant to visit but never had. Mrs. Davison, the elderly curator, knew my family name immediately. When I explained why I was there, her face grew serious. "The Flores family," she murmured. "Yes, that was a complicated time. Let me see what we have." She brought out ledgers, diaries, and newspaper clippings from the 1920s. And over the course of an afternoon, the true story emerged. The Flores family had indeed been in trouble. A predatory lender from the city was about to foreclose on them, seize everything. My great-grandfather, Samuel, had heard of their plight. He didn't force them out. He paid off their debt to the lender himself, a substantial sum, and then bought the land from the Flores family at a fair, documented price, allowing them to leave with their dignity and a fresh start. The local paper even had a small article praising his neighborly act. He wasn't their oppressor, he was their savior. He had saved the land from a true villain. And the final, damning piece of evidence, a donor record from 5 years ago. Liam Greenwood had donated $500 to the Historical Society. A digital copy of the full, unedited Flores file was listed among the materials he had accessed. He hadn't stumbled upon a dark secret. He had found a story of decency and deliberately, cynically, twisted it into a weapon. He knew the truth all along. The anger that filled me then was clean and sharp. It was no longer the hurt of a betrayed mother, it was the righteous fury of a historian defending the truth. I didn't confront him. I went home, sat at my computer, and wrote. I wrote the full, beautiful story of my great-grandfather and the Flores family. I scanned and attached the documents from the Historical Society, the loan repayment, the fair sale price, the newspaper article. I posted it all on the town's community Facebook page, a page followed by nearly everyone local. My post was not an attack. It was a reclamation. I wrote about being the guardian of the story, about how the Greenwood legacy was one of quiet help and community, not exploitation. And then, calmly and methodically, I revealed how my own grandson, a real estate agent, had discovered this story of kindness and had deliberately perverted it, editing documents to blackmail his own grandmother into giving him her home. The backlash was nuclear. Liam's professional reputation evaporated overnight. His client reviews were flooded with comments calling him unethical and cruel. The local real estate board launched an investigation. Thomas and Olivia were shamed by association, their social standing obliterated. The betrayal was now complete, but the tables had turned. I had not just defended my home, I had defended my family's honor, and in doing so, I had exposed their true dishonor for the entire world to see. The final step was with Oliver. I made changes to the trust. Thomas, Olivia, and Liam were permanently and explicitly disinherited from any future rights to the property. They would never set foot on this land again after I was gone. Then I added a new clause. Upon my passing, the house would not pass to any individual. It would become the Greenwood Flores Retreat, a writer's and artist's sanctuary, a place of creation and peace, ensuring its legacy would be one of warmth and light for generations to come. It is evening now. I am sitting on the wide porch, a glass of iced tea in my hand. The late summer sun gilds the leaves of the oak tree that my father planted the day I was born. From inside, I can hear the laughter of my sister's grandchildren, who have become my own. The house is full again, full of love and loyalty. The family that betrayed me is gone. The silence they left has been filled with a different, richer music. I look out at the land, not with the sadness of memory, but with the fierce joy of protection. I won. Not just the house, but myself. So, to anyone who thinks a grandmother is just a sweet old lady to be managed, remember, we built these families. We know every secret, and we fight for what we love. Now, this old house, and I have a lot of living left to do.